Due to Doc's severe chastisement last time we were together, I actually put my Laws of Identity poster at the top left of my blog. So
thank you.
So I wrote a paper here about all of these ideas. If you're interested in them, I'd suggest you look at the paper. Okay, so now I'm going to go on, and I'm going to talk about, I've tried to talk about user-centric ideas around identity and claims and so on. Do people see why claims make user-centric so much more possible and feasible? It's because, since you have the same architecture across everything, the user can have a unified paradigm, and the user can be at the center. Whereas if everything is done from the point of view of the enterprises and the institutions, then the user has no way to assemble things because everything is different everywhere. The same thing is true of the directories. So it's because I see this whole user-centric thing as so key. I thought you might be interested in a bit of in exploring this a bit. Is that of interest?
Yes.
Okay. So in the past, exactly what I said about claims and about identities and authorization applied to directory too. The directory, the company sets up the directory and you're in it. Darn it. And they say what they want to say, and that's the end of the story. So my view is, just as we need an identity metasystem, and I finally got to be able to talk about this yesterday. So you're the second group who I've talked to this about, talked to it at the Microsoft Professional Developers Conference yesterday. We need a directory metasystem that works holistically across the cloud, enterprises, organizations, and on devices. And in other words, it's just exactly the same concept as the identity metasystem around authentication and authorization, but it's around being able to build directory information. So a shared architecture, a shared data model, semantics, protocols, and a publication paradigm. So you can see, okay, it took us 10 years to do this identity metasystem thing. Now let's start another, I'm just like, I have a whip. Now let's start another 10-year project to do the directory metasystem, where we then, as users, could assemble information from all different places where it's held about us and be able to control it and view it and so on. In other words, bring it within our control because we have the same architecture everywhere. Now maybe we'll be able to do this one faster because we've all learned a few lessons doing the authentication part of it. So the constraints, well, the application developer experience should be the same no matter where you're developing it. In other words, it should be really easy and you shouldn't have to learn a new thing because I'm developing in the cloud or I'm developing in an enterprise or I'm developing on an iPhone. It should always be the same paradigm. And the other thing is that we need to evolve directories so they don't need to trust the applications that use them. Right now, if I develop a bad directory application, and by bad I just mean it's written by people who didn't spend much time on it and didn't realize what would happen when they had 60,000 people using it instead of one person, then that application can go and bang on the directory, and the directory, people are terrified that that's going to happen, and so they say, no, you can't put your application on my directory because my directory is already very, very, it works very nicely, thank you, and I don't want anything to interfere with that. So we need to rethink how directory can be made available without becoming vulnerable to its own success. In other words, when people would be allowed to adopt it. And there's a bunch of new demands. One is relationships. I remember when I had my own company and I went and I sold one of my first copies of my directory software, which was called Zoomet, to these very nice people. And they bought it and they paid a whole bunch of money, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have to go to jail. It's great. And I'm sitting in the room with them, and this woman said to me, Kim, this is all great. Now how do I do relationships? And I just went completely stone cold inside, because this was the X500 model. There were no relationships. How was I going to tell her? There were no relationships. She had just bought this. So anyway, it was a hard moment. One of many. You know, I had to tell her, oh, the relationships are in the tree. You know, you have a tree. You put something under something else, and that's a relationship. And she said, well, what if I have two relationships? And I said, well, you know, yeah. We learned that's not really what directories are for. But they should be. She was right. I was wrong. I mean, I knew I was wrong. I just couldn't say so at that particular moment in time. So we need relationships, and over time, the requirement for relationships has become stronger and stronger. We need multiple identifiers. We need cross-directory federation. We need to be able to express things like virtual teams and so on. We need to have this idea of multi-tenancy, so you could have one directory that holds information about a whole bunch of different logically discrete entities. We need to be able to partition the data and the workload. We need to be able to extend it without causing people fear. We need to tie it into the modern technologies like RSS, REST, WS, and so on. And we need to be able to do complex queries. I coined the term polyarchy, maybe with Doc. This idea of polyarchy many, many years ago, which is the idea that instead of having one parent, you could have a parent in any dimension. So, in other words, many, many different kinds of trees. So, just for the record, this doesn't mean disrupting Active Directory. I have to say this. Active Directory remains completely untouched, and we have a clamp on, just like we have a clamp on for federation and identity, we have a clamp on for directory. And once again, the goal would be that this is a cross-industry initiative, and that we're able then to do all of these new queries we could never do before. And I do mean new queries. So let me just talk then about what it is. What it is really, and I'm going to start taking it out on my website and taking it to the industry. The concept here is that we would have a standardized schema, and we would have and then within each of our platforms, we would have an API that surfaces that schema for the developer. In LDAP, we always had the same API. I think that was a big mistake, because the API was foreign to everyone. You know, developers live in a given context, and you want something that is native to their context. So the idea would be to get the industry to collaborate on this idea of an identity schema. And so, for example, if you're looking at the stuff that you're talking about contextual relationships in terms of browsing and so on, I believe that this schema would be ideal for representing the kind of problems that you're looking at. So that's why I thought it might be worth raising it here. So the schema is fairly extensive. It deals with what we call parties and relationships, and you'll see it also deals with resources, policies, and so on. So I'll drill down into a bit of it and then refer you to where you can get more information. So the schema has, the idea of a party is remember we talked about a claim as a statement made by one party about another party. So this is the party from there put into a schema. Something that can be spoken about and prove that it is that it is something. And the types of parties are people, organizations, devices, software services, and groups. So if you think an application is a type of software service, a phone is a type of device, a computer is a type of device, a computer running a service is a relationship between a device and a service, and so on. So you have the